Hey, what's up guys? So welcome to part 2 of my Uniden R4 setup guide. In part 1 of this video series, we went over the operation of the detector. So basically how to use the detector while you're driving, what all the different buttons in the detector mean, as well as how to pair the detector with your phone and run some apps to add some additional functionality. Now in this video for part 2, we're going to dive more into the detector itself, specifically into the different settings and menu options that are available so you can program it if you like, especially if you want to help to optimize the performance or cut down on false alerts. Now there's a lot of information in this video, and if you'd prefer instead to read over anything, or you just want to maybe reference stuff on the fly, I've also got a companion article available on my website, and I'm going to link to this article for you down underneath the like button. And this article is going to explain all these different menu options for you as well. Additionally, as Uniden updates the R4 and releases new firmware that can add features, fix bugs, or even change some things that I'm going to show you here in this video, the article is going to be the best place to go to get the latest information. This video is current as of firmware version 1.30 for the R4. And so if you happen to have a newer version of the firmware on your detector, you can again take a look at the article on the website for more information. In this video, we're going to go ahead and walk you through all the different options, and you're going to get to see exactly what all the different options do in practice. Now, as far as how to go in and navigate the menu, we've got a couple buttons here on top of the detector. We press the menu button to take us into the menu. Volume up is going to start scrolling us through the menu this way. Volume down is going to go back the other direction where we came from. If there's anything we want to change, we can just press the menu button like this, and it's going to change that menu option for us. And then if we were all done and we want to exit the menu, we can actually just press and hold the menu button here like this, or we can just let it time out, and after a couple seconds, it'll exit the menu automatically. Now, diving into the menu options, we're going to start here first with the expert or basic menu options. The basic one is just going to give you a couple different options of things that you can go in here and adjust on the detector. But for now, we're actually going to go in and unlock the expert menu option. This is going to open up all the different options that are available in the detector, especially some of the additional filtering capabilities to help cut down on some false alerts. Now, first, we're going to be adjusting the detector's sensitivity. There's 4 different options here. There's automatic sensitivity, advanced sensitivity, highway, and city mode. Now, we'll start here first with highway mode. Highway is going to be full sensitivity on all bands at all times. City mode is going to give us full sensitivity on Ka band, but really dial back the sensitivity on X and K band. And because in the city you've got a lot of false alerts on X and K band from door openers and speed signs and whatnot, you can get the city mode to, well, dial back the sensitivity of the detector. So it's not going to give you as long of a detection range, but it's cutting down some of those false alerts and legitimate alerts that you're going to be seeing on both X and K band. Now, if you like the idea of having the detector switching between highway mode, kind of like full sensitivity at all times, or maybe a little bit quieter in the city, cutting back the sensitivity when you're driving at lower speeds and whatnot, that's actually where the auto sensitivity option is going to be. And that's going to vary the detector based on a certain speed threshold. So you can go in here and choose exactly what sensitivity level, or sorry, speed level you want. So for example, maybe you want when you're above 45 miles an hour, it'll be at full sensitivity highway mode, and then below this speed, it'll go back to city mode. On the other hand, you also are going to have a 4th option here, which is going to be advanced mode. Now, all advanced mode is going to do is going to give you some additional controls for the sensitivity on X band, K band, and Ka band. So you can see right now I've got the option to dial back the sensitivity of any of these bands all the way down to 30% here like this, or go ahead and crank it up to max sensitivity. Now, it's worth noting that advanced mode doesn't unlock any other advanced capabilities of the detector. Expert mode, like we talked about, does unlock some of the other features that you can then access, but advanced mode, all that's really doing is giving you the ability to individually control the sensitivity of X, K, and Ka band, regardless of what speed that you're traveling. Personally, I like to run in auto mode like this just to get higher sensitivity on the highway, and then crank it down in the city to keep things quieter. Now, something cool to note, if you want to access or change those settings on the fly, you can just press and hold menu like this when you're at the idle screen, and then just kind of press the menu button to cycle through the different sensitivity modes. So if you want to run maybe highway mode like this, and you're out driving, and then you're like, hey, you know, I want to manually switch to city mode, you can just press and hold and switch to city mode like that without having to first go into the detector's menu and then start cycling through the different options. So I know it's at the front of the menu, but that is just a nice little shortcut to get to whatever sensitivity mode that you want. Now, continuing on through the menu, we've got the GPS feature. You can turn that on and off if you like. I definitely would prefer having it on. There's a lot of helpful GPS features built into the detector for things like low speed muting, or your GPS lockouts, or red light camera alerts, or displaying your speed on screen and that kind of stuff. So I find the GPS features really helpful, but if you want to turn GPS off, you can certainly do that. Now, speaking of GPS, the next menu option is going to be for your speed cameras, which you can turn on and off. You see, the Detector has a GPS database built into the Detector that can alert you as you're approaching a speed camera or a red light camera or something. It's not actually detecting any radar, it's a GPS thing. And that update, or that database, is updatable. So as there's maybe new cameras that show up or old ones disappear, you can actually grab the latest database off of Uniden's website and update your Detector using their update software. And this is going to give you the ability to, get notified to those speed cameras if you want, or maybe turn off the alerts if you prefer. And speaking of customizing things, the next option is going to allow you to adjust the distance as far as how far away you are before the Detector starts alerting you to the speed camera. And you can go in here and adjust the different options here, or you can have an automatic option that basically adjusts your alert distance based on the kind of like speed limit threshold here of the camera. Not your speed as you're driving, because of course your speed can vary, but if you're approaching a speed camera that has like a really high limit, maybe it'll give you a longer distance alert. Or if you're driving maybe on like city streets and it's got a lower speed threshold where it's giving tickets, it'll wait a little bit longer before you actually get that alert notification. Next, we've also got the option to alert to red light cameras if you like, or you can turn off those alerts altogether. Now for this one, instead of giving you a certain distance to the red light camera, we actually have a red light camera quiet ride option, and this is going to be particularly useful on the highway. Now, the idea is the Detector doesn't know what road you're on. All it knows is you're driving this direction and there's a red light camera approaching up ahead, and it can give you a notification as you're getting closer to the camera. Now, this can happen sometimes if, let's say, you're on the highway, but there's like on a nearby surface street, there's a red light camera too. And so you can actually be getting a notification, but not actually approaching that red light camera. And so for that reason, the Detector can say like, okay, if you're driving at like highway speeds, pretty fast, maybe don't alert me to any red light cameras up ahead because I'm probably on the highway, not on the city. And if you'd like to use that menu option, we've got speeds here available anywhere from 50 miles an hour all the way up to 85 miles an hour. I like to run it around maybe 60 or so, but of course you can set it wherever you like. Now the next option is going to be your POI Passchime. And this is basically designed to give you a chime as you're passing, say, a speed camera or something. I find it a little bit annoying because like I already know if there's a speed camera as I'm approaching or something. I would prefer keeping it muted. I don't need it like constantly beeping at me or anything. And so I like having the pass chime off so I don't get like an additional beep as I'm passing the speed camera. But again, if you want that additional notification, you can turn the POI pass chime on. Now the next menu option is going to be for our voice. So if we want to turn it on, it's going to go ahead and start speaking different menu options for us.
Voice off, voice on.
But really, that's going to be for actually giving us some band information for when we get some alerts.
KA band.
We'll go ahead and unmute it as well. But you can actually hear how it said KA band. This can be especially nice when you're first getting the Detector and you're learning the difference between K band and KA band and what the different audio tones are like. So it can actually just let you know what band you're getting. KA band, for example, is much more likely to be a legitimate threat, a police officer. You're going to get a lot more false alerts on K band and X band too, for that matter. So knowing the band can definitely be very helpful. We can go ahead and trigger a K band alert next so you can see what that's like. Go. There's my K-band alert. We'll just go ahead and manually mute that as well. So you can hear that it's actually telling you KA-band or K-band. Now, once you get comfortable with the different bands, if you like, you can actually turn those off. Additionally, something that's worth noting is when you're trying to go through the menu, it's a lot faster to do this when you've got the voice option turned off. If you've got the voice turned on like this, it's a little bit slower to go through the different menu options. And so once you're really trying to like go through a long list of menu options, you can also turn it off just to allow yourself to like really fly through this stuff a lot faster. Now, speaking of the voice, we also have the KA frequency voice.
KA frequency, voice on.
We'll go ahead and turn that on, and you're going to hear it now when we get the KA band alert. It's going to tell us the frequency of the signal too.
KA band 34673.
Now, knowing the exact frequency of a signal that you encounter is a bit of an advanced feature, but once you understand how to use it, it's actually very helpful in practice. And so for that reason, if you want to learn more information, I've got a whole dedicated video that kind of explains how to use a frequency display or audio announcements like this, and how to kind of use them to your benefit to identify legitimate alerts or maybe help filter out false alerts as well. And so personally, I like to have this KA frequency voice turned on, but I'll actually go in here and actually turn off the voice instead. And in this configuration, here's how your KA band alerts sound.
34672.
You've got the KA band blips, the alert tones. It speaks the frequency, and then it just goes back to alerting. We'll just go ahead and mute it here like this. And so you can still tell that it's KA, you know the frequency, but you don't need that additional announcement to let you know that this is a KA band signal. Of course, once you're used to the alert tones. And so this way you've got those immediate alert tones so that you can just tell that's a KA band alert. Then once you're on the brakes, you can get the frequency announcement so you can start interpreting that signal a little bit better. And then it resumes alerting with the normal alert tones so that you can kind of tell the ramp up as the signal gets stronger or weaker as you're driving down the road. Now, the next menu option is going to be for X-band. In most places, you can have that turned off. X-band antennas are really huge. They're kind of older technologies, and they've been phased out of most of the country at this point. We still do see X-band in use in places like Ohio and I believe southern New Jersey, and a couple rural places here and there throughout the country. But for the most part, you can actually just shut X-band off and, well, filter out, disable X-band so you're not getting all the false alerts you would otherwise experience from like your X-band door openers and whatnot. Next, we've got K-band. K-band is actively in use throughout most of the country. There are a couple examples here and there, like in California, for example, K-band has mostly been phased out. It's almost exclusively Ka-band and laser. And so if you want, you could turn K-band off like this. I have seen some reports around the Bay Area of K-band in use, so you might want to consider turning it back on. But for most of the country, yes, K-band is in use. You'll want to have it turned on. Now for Ka-band, that's definitely in use pretty much everywhere. So you'll want to have Ka-band turned on here like this. And then moving on, we've got our laser detection. You can turn that on and off. Laser detection in a radar detector isn't particularly useful as far as actually protecting you. Now, I've got other videos that go into this in more detail too, but laser detection in a radar detector is mostly a speeding ticket notifier. Like, you generally don't get any advanced warning. By the time you're shot, like, that's when your detector goes off, if it alerts at all. Uniden detectors do have a below average sensitivity when it comes to laser, but not a huge deal in practice, given the fact that you don't really get advanced warning in the first place. Again, it's kind of like a speeding ticket notifier, but leaving laser detection like this turned on certainly couldn't hurt. Next, we've got the laser gun ID feature. This is pretty cool. This allows the detector to actually identify what laser gun you're being hit with when you're actively being targeted by laser. It's basically taking a look at the different pulse patterns coming out of different makes and models of different police laser guns and then telling you what gun you're being shot with. Next, we've got the option for the laser transponders. This is if you've got Uniden's laser jammers plugged in here to the side of the detector in that port right there. Now, Uniden's laser jammers are still not available for sale individually to be paired with the R4 or the R8. It's the same laser jammers that they're using now with the R9, their custom installed radar detector, but it seems like they're really wanting to prioritize sales of the R9, and so the Uniden laser jammers are currently still only available with the R9 radar detector. Now, I have seen some people actually taking the laser jammers from the R9 and kind of like selling them separately to people if you want to buy them for your R4 or your R8, and that can certainly work. They're the same laser jammers. That said, if you want to go down that route, people actually do need to take those laser jammers and first have them connected to the R9 and kind of power everything up so everything like pairs and starts working properly. If you don't do that, then when you plug the laser jammers from the R9 into the R4, they're not going to be recognized. So if you do want to buy a set of R9 laser jammers for your R4, make sure that the seller actually has first kind of like powered everything up and make sure it's all connected and working properly. But then once you do that, yes, you can actually take those laser jammers and plug them into the side of the R4. Now, if you've got those laser jammers plugged into your R4, you can turn the laser transponders or the laser jammers on and off like this. Now, there is still some work here that needs to be done as far as different settings that need to be added to like fully make this as capable as it needs to be. There's really only like two menu options here. The first one is going to be for how the laser jammers disarm. You can basically have them jam continuously here like this, which we only use in testing. And then there's also going to be an option for pulse mode, which is like jam for 10 seconds and then disarm. There needs to be an option to shorten that timer, but right now the pulse mode is only 10 seconds and then disarm. And then we have receive mode, which is basically detection only, but no jamming altogether. Again, we do need to see some additional options for how to control the jammers, how to disarm them, how to rearm them and stuff. It's a lot of the stuff that they've added to the R9 that's not yet available for the R4, and I'm assuming that once they decide to go ahead and release the laser jammer standalone for the R4 and the R8, they'll release an updated firmware here that adds the additional settings that are necessary to really use your jammers properly. Now, the other option that's available is going to be for the laser transponder settings. This is actually going to allow you to go in and choose for the 6 different laser heads, which ones are connected to the front of the vehicle and which ones are connected to the back. So you can go in here and start cycling and say, you know, do you want it to receive or transmit, Or is this transponder 1, for example, is it configured in the rear of the car? And so you can do front and rear, receive, and transmit. And we can do this again for all 6 of the different heads. For most laser guns, all of the heads are going to both detect and jam laser. For the Dragon Eye specifically, that's where the RX and the TX stuff comes into play. Typically what you're going to want to do is if you have maybe 3 heads in the front and 3 in the rear, which is kind of your traditional setup, you want the 2 outer heads to be configured as your RX, your receive heads, and then the center head is going to be your transmit head. And this is going to apply both to the front and to the back. And that's actually going to be the default configuration here. So we can see transponder 1, 2, and 3 are going to be for the front. 4, 5, and 6 are going to be for the rear. Then if we look at the RX and TX stuff, transponder 1 is receive, transponder 3 is receive, and then the center head is going to be transmit. And then in the back, we've got transponder 4 and 6, which is going to be receive. And then transponder 5 in the middle is going to be transmit. Again, once the laser jammers are available for sale, I expect this stuff to be further developed, so you can check out the article on my website that kind of like further explains any new settings that have been added, assuming you're watching this video with the newer firmware and the laser jammers are available. I'm assuming there's going to be newer settings, so I'll cover all that kind of stuff as far as additional updates for you in the article on my website. Moving on, we've got our pop detection available here for K-band pop. You can turn it on and off. And in short, pop, it's a really fast form of radar that turns on and off really quickly, designed to allow officers to preview the speed of moving vehicles, hopefully without alerting different radar detectors in the process. They can't use it to issue tickets. They have to then switch over to like full traditional type of radar, build a tracking history and all that kind of stuff. I've talked about pop in many other videos before. But in short, the K-band pop option is going to be 67 millisecond K-band pop, not the faster 16 millisecond pop. There's also another option later on down in the menu for Ka-band pop. That's your 67 millisecond Ka-band pop. But again, it's rarely in use. You're going to get false alerts if you have it turned on, and it's usually best to just leave the setting turned off. But you do have the option if you want to play with it, or let's say there's officers in your area that have pop that they like to play with. So you've got it for K-band and for Ka-band here. Next, we've got MRCD. So we've got support for the MultaRadar CD, the MultaRadar CT, as well as the Gatso RT3 and Gatso RT4. And all of these are specifically for your stationary photo radar systems. You'll sometimes see these photo radar systems on a pole or on a tripod or even attached to a car that's parked on the side of the road. And if you've got those in your area, you can just turn the appropriate setting on the detector. But if you do that, you're also going to be getting some additional false alerts. So I'd recommend only turning it on if you need it, if those are in use in your area. If you don't know for sure, there's a thread that we've actually started over on the forums where we're kind of keeping track of the different types of photo radar systems that are in use throughout the country or up in Canada as well. And I'll link to that article for you down in the description too. Now, for the sake of this video, we're going to go ahead and turn both of these on just because of the fact that when you do that, there's going to be some additional menu options that will show up here in the detector. Now, the next option is going to be for our K-band filter. This we definitely want to have turned on. This is going to help to filter out a lot of the false alerts from nearby cars with blind spot radar and collision avoidance systems and whatnot. The detector is not going to be perfect. It's still going to false to some of these different systems, just like pretty much every detector on the market. But that K-band filter is going to be very helpful to filter out a lot of the different sources of false alerts. There's a couple other tools that we can use that we'll take a look at here to kind of further cut back on some of those false alerts. Now, in addition to the K-band filter, there's also a Ka-band filter that you can turn on if you like. Though if you don't need it, you can leave it turned off for a little bit better performance. Now, the idea here is there are some sources of Ka-band falses. Luckily, they're pretty rare. We occasionally see them from things like satellite dishes attached to certain houses, for example. So if you pass by a satellite dish, you can have a Ka-band filter, or you can use some of the Ka-band lockouts, which we'll also talk about in this video. But if you encounter some false alerts on Ka-band, you can consider trying to enable the Ka-band filter to cut out some of those alerts. Next, we've got TSF, which is your traffic sensor filter. And this is going to be helpful for highway driving. You see, there's certain highways in the country where they like to put these K-band transmitters along the highway to monitor the flow of traffic. And so if you're driving down the road, you're going to keep getting these periodic blasts of K-band on your detector. And if that happens to you, you can try enabling the TSF option, the traffic sensor filter, to cut out those stationary false alerts without having to maybe create a bunch of lockouts or something. Additionally, this can also sometimes help with some of the blind spot falses. So it can compromise performance a little bit with these ones. I forget what the latest firmware kind of changes from one to another. Actually, I did some testing pretty recently, and again, yeah, it's still pretty good as far as like response time, even with TSF enabled. And so for that reason, I know a lot of us, myself included, like to actually have TSF turned on to give you a little bit of a boost in terms of blind spot filtering without actually introducing a big impact to the performance of the detector, which is really nice, especially compared to some other brands of detectors. Now, speaking of blind spot falses, we also have the K-block options. We've got K-block 1 and K-block 2. The main difference is going to be the frequency range that they cover. K-block 1 is going to be for 24.199. for your Hondas, Acuras, Chryslers, etc. And then you've got your 24.168, which is also for some like Hondas and Acuras, some Jeeps, and some other vehicles. Now we've got a couple options here to adjust how this K-block functions. And the idea is you're basically going to select what type of filtering you want for any signals within those particular frequency ranges. My preferred option is to have them both set up here to filter out weak signals. And the idea here is the blind spot radar coming out of a lot of cars is typically going to be a lot weaker than what you'll see from like traditional police radar. And so for that reason, you can just filter out weak signals. But the downside of this is the fact that because you are filtering out weak signals, this is also going to be reducing your range. Like if it's a legitimate police radar gun, it's going to be filtering it out while the signal's still weak. And only once you get closer to the source, the signal gets strong enough to punch through this filter, and then you start getting your alert. So range will kind of be affected against signals in those particular frequency ranges only. But because they're such common ranges for falses, I typically like to have it, especially here where I live, where there's not a ton of legitimate K-band radar. Now, if you like, there's a couple other ways to approach the filtering of signals in these frequency ranges too. For example, the next option is going to be just muting all signals. So this completely ignores signal strength, and any signals in these frequency ranges will just be audibly muted. It will still show it here on the display of the detector, but it's just going to be audibly muting those signals for you. Now, there's also another option if you want to be even more aggressive, which is just to basically turn the K-block on. And in this situation, you're literally blocking all signals in these frequency ranges, real or false. This is going to be the most aggressive option because you're basically saying, like, don't alert to any signals in that frequency range at all. Don't audibly alert me, don't visually alert me, don't show anything on screen, just basically nuke any signals in this range. So that's the most aggressive option. It's probably also the most risky one, but that option is available too to fully block any signals in these frequency ranges. And then finally, for the least aggressive option, that's going to be setting your K-block here to off and basically doing no filtering for any signals in these ranges. But again, my preferred option is having it set up here to weak. So we've got two different K-blocks, K-block 1, K-block 2. They do the exact same thing, just for different frequency ranges. Next, we've got our different K-band options. So you can basically select the different ranges where the K-band actually can scan for in the detector. So K-band wide is going to be a traditional range for police radar here in the United States. We've got K-band narrow, which is going to be a tighter range of frequency in the US to cut out some K-band on the edges. And then K-extended is going to give you the widest possible range of K-band, which is particularly useful overseas. Or even here in North America, if you encounter some photo radar systems, a lot of those may actually operate down lower on K-band, around 23.9-ish or so. And if that's the case, you may actually want to choose to enable the K-extended option just to give you that widest possible range of K-band frequencies. If you don't have photo radar, you can use something like K-band wide if you like. And if you have maybe very little legitimate K-band, you could even switch it down to K-band narrow to get the most narrow range of frequency ranges the detector can pick up. Next, we've got our Ka-band segmentation options. And with the detector here, we've got three different options for Ka-band segmentation. We've got our Ka-band wide option, which is going to be scanning all of Ka-band on the detector. We've got Ka-band segmentation, which is going to give us the options to choose the exact frequency ranges the detector is scanning for. Or we can set it to Ka-band narrow, which is basically going to be scanning segments 2, 5, and 8-ish. Now, what does all that mean? Okay, taking a step back here. On Ka-band, this is a much wider range of frequencies than what we have on K-band or even X-band. There's a lot of possible ranges where police can transmit their radar guns. However, we found that in practice, there's only very small sections of Ka-band where police radar guns or radar gun manufacturers are designing their guns to transmit. So for example, the brand MPH designs their guns to transmit around 33.8-ish. Stalker designs their guns to transmit around 34.7-ish. And then Decatur and Custom design their guns to transmit around 35.5-ish. And so for that reason, instead of having your detector set up for Ka wide, where it's scanning all of the possible frequency ranges on Ka band, you can switch it to something like Ka narrow, which is basically just narrowing down the range of frequencies to scan around 33.8, 34.7, and 35.5. Additionally, because Stalker brand radar guns tend to drift in frequency a little bit more than the other manufacturers, the sweep for your Stalker 34.7 guns is a little bit wider than what we have for 33.8 and 35.5. However, we do find that you may actually want a wider scan around Stalker because they can actually drift so much. Like in New York, for example, we see not just segment 5 Stalkers, but also like segment 4 and segment 6. They're drifting into like additional ranges of Ka-band. And so for that reason, you can actually go in here and switch it to the Ka-band segmentation option. And now when you do that, you can set the exact frequency ranges the detector is going to scan for. So for example, Ka-band segment 2, this is going to be your 33.8-ish guns, 33.8 plus minus about 100 megahertz. There's also going to be segment 5, which is going to be 34/7-ish. If you want, you can enable segments 4 and segment 6. Turn these on and off. And then finally, KA segment 8. These are going to be your 35/5 guns. And again, you've got a whole bunch of segments. It goes all the way up to segment 9. With the Unidens, it actually stops at 35/7. There is no option to go all the way up to 36 gigahertz, the way you do with like escorts, for example. They actually took away the segment 10 scanning area to give us a wider scanning on K-band for photo radar. But, I mean, I guess that kind of works out because we never typically see any segment 10 Ka band, like up closer to 36 gigahertz, so it works out. But just a fun little aside on that. But either way, I know this kind of stuff might be a little bit confusing and you're wondering, like, what segments should I run in different areas? We have an article for that too. Over on the forum, we're keeping track of different frequency radar guns in different states, and so you can actually read over that to see which segments you need in different areas. Again, the standard recommendation is going to be segments 2, 4, 5, and 6, as well as 8. So 5 segments total. Maybe you'll want to do more segments or less or whatever, again, depending on what officers use in your area, but that's what the KA segmentation options are going to be for in the R4. Next, we've got some options here for KA/MRCD priority, MRCD/KA priority, or signal priority. Now, I actually want to go back here real quick, and we're going to turn off the MRCD option, because I know a lot of people are going to be running it this way. And when you do that, it's actually going to change the menu options here. We've got now 2 options, signal priority and KA priority. So let's talk about these first before we add MRCD back in. Now, with these 2 different options, you basically have the ability to choose, if the detector is seeing multiple signals, which signal is it going to prioritize you to give you the audio alerts for and also the main display on the detector for. Now, I like to have the KA priority option because it's going to be prioritizing KA band alerts over K-band alerts regardless of signal strength. Why is that important? Well, here where I live, for example, there's, again, as I mentioned earlier in the video, very little legitimate K-band. So if there's any KA-band in the area, I really want to know. So let's say if I'm maybe passing by like a speed sign and I'm picking up a really strong K-band signal, but there's a weak K-band or KA-band alert in the distance, I want to know about that weak KA-band alert, even though it's weaker than the K-band alert, right? I want to prioritize KA-band over K-band. So that's what the KA priority option is for. Now, on the other hand, let's say you have a lot of like legitimate K-band in your area and you're like, if there's a K-band source that's really strong, like I want to know because there's a lot of K-band that's in use around here. So I don't really care about the band so much. I just want to know what's the strongest source. And so if that's the case, then you'll want to run the signal priority option, which is kind of short for signal strength priority. Next, we're going to go ahead and turn MultaRadar detection here back on. And when we do that, we've still got the signal priority option, but now we've got either KA/MRCD priority or MRCD/KA priority. And this is basically saying if we see both a KA band alert and an MRCD alert, which one is the detector going to prioritize? It's going to ignore signal strength. It's just going to be taking a look at the band. Now, if you've got MultaRadar in your area and that's why you're enabling the MRCD option, then you're going to want to have it set up to MRCD/KA priority. And the reason is MultaRadar photo radar, it's very low power. You're going to get very short detection ranges. And if you get an alert to MultaRadar, you need to respond quick. You're typically going to be passing the photo radar source within a couple seconds or so at most. And so as soon as the detector starts alerting, you need to go ahead and take action quickly. That said, why is there a different option for maybe prioritizing KA band over MultaRadar? That's actually because of the fact that enabling MRCD detection has a secondary benefit where it can help to filter out some false alerts from Mazda CX-5s. And those are really pesky sources of false alerts that typically alert around 24.123 or 124. And we don't have like a K-block option or anything built in here to the detector to help us filter those out. And so another option, kind of a workaround, is if you enable MultaRadar detection, it's also going to help to knock out some of the false alerts from your Mazda CX-5s. However, that's also going to introduce some additional false alerts on MRCD, and so maybe you'll want to use some of the other filtering options, which we'll also get into here. But if you're enabling MRCD specifically to filter out your Mazda CX-5s, in that case, you'll want to set it up with KA/MRCD priority. And this is going to be helpful because you're not really as concerned about MRCD alerts because they're mostly going to be falses and whatnot. And if you see a KA band alert, you really want to know about those. So you're prioritizing KA over MRCD, hence the option to choose KA/MRCD priority. Next, we've got our mute mem option. And we've got the option here by default of only having the mute memory work for X and K band. If we want, we can also have it apply to KA band as well, but that can be pretty risky. Now, your mute memory is basically your GPS lockouts. So this is going to be useful for your stationary speed signs on the side of the road or grocery store, shopping center door openers. You can basically teach the detector where a false alert is located. And the way that you're going to do that is we're going to go ahead and trigger a K-band alert here on the detector. And when the signal pops up on the detector, we're going to double press the mute button on the detector. You can see mute memory, and now it says in green text mute memory, and it's learned this false alert, and it's going to have it grayed out here on screen. And this will be nice, so after you teach it initially where these false alerts are located, the next time you come by, it'll keep the detector muted for you. And when you get the alert, it's going to show up here on screen, but it's going to be totally silent. It's going to be grayed out on screen to not grab your attention as much, and you've got that green text again to confirm that this is a locked out signal. If you ever want to unlock that signal, you can again double press the mute button, and you're going to unlock the signal, and it's going to go back to alerting normally. I'll just press it once just to do a traditional mute here like this, and there we go. Now, this is a feature that we're only going to want to use for stationary false alerts. Because it's GPS based, it's kind of filtering out signals in this specific location. We don't use it for signals that are moving, like blind spot falses or anything. And obviously you don't want to be locking out police officers. It's just for stationary false alerts like speed signs and door openers. Now, if you want, you could also use this option to filter out KA band alerts. But because KA band falses are pretty rare, be very careful with this option. But if you are in an area where maybe there's like a satellite dish in a nearby house where every time you pass the same house, your detector alerts to KA band, you can enable the KA band lockouts here as well. And then when you pass that KA band alert next time, we'll just go ahead and do the double press. And now you can see we've got a mute memory set up here. We've locked out that KA band alert just like before. Looks like we got a second alert that popped up independent of the lockout. So that's pretty cool. So that mute memory lockout is only going to apply to the one signal. But if you've got additional signals that pop up, that can actually punch through a lockout. So that was cool to see. But we're going to go ahead and delete that lockout because we don't want KA band locked out or anything. Now, as a bonus, if you enable the KA band lockouts, it's also going to let you lock out MRCD alerts. And that can be helpful because I've noticed that if you enable MRCD, there are certain locations that will actually false not as traditional K-band, but as MRCD. And so to knock out those false alerts, you can actually manually lock out those MRCD falses too. Now, this is kind of a hidden option because it only says KA. It doesn't also say MRCD, but MRCD lockouts are enabled too if you enable the KA band lockouts. But for most people, I think X and K is going to be the way to go because you don't want to be locking out KA band or anything because that can be so risky. Now, there's also the option for the automatic GPS lockouts. And we can control how the auto lockouts work as well, if they apply to just X and K or if they also apply to KA or to MRCD. Now, with auto lockouts, it's the same idea. Instead of you having to go in and tell the detector where those false alerts are, after a couple passes, the detector can learn where these stationary false alerts are and then automatically begin locking them out for you. That said, Uniden's implementation of auto lockouts is still kind of bad. We've been complaining about this for years, asking them to improve their lockout algorithm, but it still does not reliably lock out false alerts. So even if you have the auto lockouts locked out, let's say you're passing a stationary source many times and it just will not lock out, you might still want to fall back to the manual lockouts instead with the double press of the mute button. Now, that said, after a couple passes, in many instances, the auto lockouts will kick in, and that's what this feature is for, so you don't have to initially teach the detector where all those false alerts are. Now, if you wanted to turn off the auto lockouts, you can certainly do that. I like to leave them on. Now, this option here for the auto lockouts to also apply to KA and MRCD, I would not recommend doing that. I would typically suggest leaving it turned off. And if you want to lock out like stationary KA falses or MRCD falses or something, I would maybe go through the manual mute memory option here like this and just lock them out here with the mute button, but not having the automatic lockouts also apply to KA and MRCD just because automatically locking out KA can be risky as well. Now, the next menu option is going to be for our all threat display, and that is actually going to be for the little window here on the side of the detector. And the idea is when you're getting one signal like this, it's going to pop up here on the display, but if you're getting any additional signals, you can see the primary signal right there. I've got it set up right now for KA priority, so that's getting prioritized over my K-band signal because of the band. It's ignoring signal strength stuff. But we've got our primary signal here, and then up to 3 additional signals here in the all threat display. And you can turn that feature off if you like, if you really only care about the primary signal. But if you want to see the additional signals, it could be helpful. You can turn the all threat display on. Then we can go in and adjust the color of the display. You can see we've got a variety of different options. So if you want to maybe have it match the interior of your car or something like that, you can just choose whatever color that you like. We've also got the option here for adjusting the band. So this is nice. So you can have the color of different signals actually vary by signal strength, or you can have certain signals always show up in a specific color. We'll do K-band like always in yellow, for example, and Ka-band be the signal strength. So let's see what that would look like. So if we've got a K-band signal, that's going to show up here in yellow. So you can see like this text right here, the K is going to be in yellow, and it doesn't change color, right? On the other hand, if we do a Ka-band alert, you can see that's going to be red right here because it's matching the full strength signal. But then as the signal strength starts to drop, you're going to see that Ka-band text change in color as well. And it's kind of a little thing, I guess. It's not a big deal, but that's what that menu option is for. Next, we've got a couple different options here for the idle display. We can either have it display the mode, the current time, or have it like a little scanning bar. So I've been using throughout this video the mode display. So when I'm at the idle screen here, it tells me right now I'm in the automatic sensitivity option. If I go to like maybe advanced sensitivity, like we talked about earlier, or where I switch it to highway mode, it's going to tell me which mode I have set up right there. On the other hand, if I switch it over to time, I can do that, and then it's going to go ahead and show me the current time right here on screen, which can be kind of nice. You can still see the mode, so you can see the H right now for highway. You can also still see things like auto and advanced. Here's the A for auto mode, and if you switch it to advanced, you can see that as well, but it's going to be a D to let you know that it's advanced. And then finally, you can switch to the scan display like this, and this is going to be giving you kind of like a scanning display like that. It doesn't really tell you anything particularly useful. It's just kind of a little animation. And you can still see what mode you're in right there. AD just like before. If we switch it over to like city mode, for example, you'll see a city on screen there. And then there's also going to be an option here for a scanning icon. If we turn that on, that's just going to be giving you like a little blinking heart icon on screen like that. So again, just a little animation. And personally, I prefer sticking to something like mode or time and then just leaving the scan icon off. Now, we also have the option over on the left side of the screen if we want to display our speed and compass, our direction of travel. We can have it display just the compass, you know, north, south, northeast, whatever. We can have the voltage of our vehicle, or we can even have our altimeter, which can be kind of fun if you're going like up through the mountains or something. I typically like to have speed and compass. One thing that I've typically found though is when you first start your car, before it can actually figure out what direction you're traveling, a lot of times the compass here will be spinning, and that's going to be letting you know that it hasn't figured out what direction of travel you're going yet. Like it knows I'm going 0, but I haven't started driving, and so the compass is spinning. That can be a little bit annoying for videos. And so for that reason, a lot of times when you see me do videos, I've got it set up to this maybe just speed only, so it just displays my speed but doesn't have the spinning compass thing. But in practice, having the compass can be kind of nice. Next, we've got two different alert display options. We've got alert display mode number 1 and number 2. Now, number 2 is what I typically like to use. And the reason is I think it takes up the display a little bit better. So for example, when you get a Ka-band alert like this, it's going to be taking up the whole screen. You can see Ka-band, our frequency, and then the signal strength bar is going to be right here at the bottom of the screen. Now, the default option is going to be alert display mode number 1. And if we take a look at that, you can see now that it's going to be displaying Ka-band. We've got our bar graph here for the signal strength as well as the frequency display. I do find that it maybe wastes a little bit of space because like that space at the bottom is not being used, and also the frequency display is a little bit smaller. And so for that reason, I like to switch it over to alert display number 2. It just makes the frequency display a little bit bigger and easier to read at a glance, especially with a little smaller display here like what the R4 has. Next, we can have the detector display our information in miles per hour or in kilometers per hour, whatever is appropriate for our area. And then we've also got a variety of different alert tones available in the detector. This is going to apply to X-band, K-band. We'll come back to the bogey tones here in just a minute. MultaRadar, Gatso, Ka, as well as laser. And to let you hear what the different tones are like, let's just run through them here real quick. And we've also got some different bogey alert tones. So K-band bogeys as well as Ka-band bogeys. Now, what are bogeys? Well, this is the idea of like the detector, if it's first alerting, let's say to a K-band alert, but now it picks up a secondary K-band signal. That's going to be a new K-band bogey. Or let's say it's alerting to Ka-band, but maybe you've muted that signal or something. And all of a sudden now it picks up a second Ka-band signal. Different frequency, potentially different radar gun, different officer, another car up ahead. Maybe you passed one officer and boom, there's a second one up ahead. Right? If you've got a second signal the detector really wants you to know about, that's when it's going to trigger the new bogey alert tone. This can apply for both K-band and for Ka-band, and you've got some custom alert tones for this. I typically prefer having the Ka-band Bogey tones working, but not the K-band ones, just because when you're driving around in like a shopping center or something, you can have like multiple K-band alerts. So you could be like muting the signal and it's boom, like new K-band signal, new K-band signal, new K-band signal. I'm like, I know, but stay quiet. There's a lot of falses. So I like to shut off the K-band Bogey alert tones, but enable the Ka-band Bogey alert tones. And these tones are different than the traditional alert tones. So let's just run through these here real quick. And then moving on, we've also got an auto mute option. This is pretty helpful. We sometimes turn it off for testing, but typically you like to have it turned on. And the auto mute option is basically going to have the detector alert at full volume for a few seconds. And then after it's got your attention, it can go ahead and reduce the volume of the detector. So you can continue to hear as the signal gets stronger or weaker or something, but without screaming at you full tilt. And then to customize the auto mute, we also have the ability to control how far down it drops the volume when it goes to the auto muted level. So maybe by default, you're running your volume at like 4 or 5. You can have the auto mute drop it down to volume 2. You can also go in and adjust here exactly, how far down you want it to go. Auto mute volume 0 would basically be like alert at normal volume and then totally mute. Or if you want to be a little bit quieter, you can do somewhere down here. And you can play around with what volume levels you like. We also have the dark mode option here, and this is going to be helpful if we go over here to the display. We're going to set it up here to dark mode here like this. And when you've got it set up in dark mode, you've got that little blinking dot at the bottom of the screen to let you know the detector is on. And when you get an alert, it'll pop up here at the screen or on screen. Let's just mute it here real quick. And you can basically control here like how bright does the display get when the signal pops up. So if you use dark mode a lot at night, maybe you want a dimmer display here like this. But if you're using dark mode, maybe more in the daytime or something, maybe you'd want it set up into bright. And when you do that, again, the dark mode blinking dot is still going to be dim. But when you get your signal, it'll be nice and bright here. We'll just mute it again. So you're basically adjusting how bright does the display get when the signal pops up. And when you have it set to the auto display brightness, you've also got the option here for the auto dim setting option. Now to go into here, it can either use the ambient light sensor in the detector to vary the detector's brightness for you, or if you want, you can have the detector's brightness vary based on the time of day. And that can be helpful because the ambient light sensor isn't always super accurate. If you go in here, you can adjust, the time when it gets bright. Like in the morning, what time, like after sunrise, do you want the detector's display to get bright? And also, how bright do you want it to be when it does get bright? And then same thing, like what time is sunset-ish? What time does it start to get darker? You can choose the time here, and then choose how far down does it actually dim the display for you when it actually does get dark. Next, we've got our backlight option, and that's basically just going to be for these two buttons. If you want them to be glowing and lit up when you're driving around, you can turn the backlight on. Quiet Ride, this is going to be our low-speed muting. I typically like to run it maybe around city-ish speeds, so when you're driving around town, it keeps the detector quieter for you. I've had it turned off here for the video, but we'll just go ahead and demo what that's like. So if we trigger an X-band or a K-band alert, for example, when you get one of those, you can see that it says Quiet Ride on screen with the green text. The display is blinking, but the main thing is the fact that the detector is actually muted for you. It's totally quiet and silent, so you're not getting a whole bunch of alerts. It is worth noting that this is going to be muting both legitimate and false alerts on X and K-band, right? If we do a Ka-band alert, and we'll just mute it real quick, the low-speed muting is not going to be applying to Ka-band. And so this low-speed muting is really here to help you keep the detector a little quieter around town. We've also got a couple options here to customize how the low-speed muting works. First up, we've got the option here to give you low-speed muting specifically for your MRCD or MRCT alerts. And so this is going to be helpful to really ensure that you get notified immediately of any sort of photo radar threats, especially if you have a lot of it here in your area. And the reason I say that is maybe you've got like your normal K-band falses from door openers and stuff muted. If it's alerting to photo radar, you've got a couple seconds of advance warning. So you want to make sure that you're getting that alert even if you're traveling around at low speeds. And so for that reason, you can actually go in here into the detector and turn off the low-speed muting for the photo radar to make sure that you get alerted, even if it's still muting your door openers and speed signs otherwise. If you don't have photo radar in your area and you're using it just for like the Mazda CX-5 filtering, this can be helpful just to go ahead and mute your MRCD falses. Particularly the ones that you'll get alerted to when you're just passing like a door opener or something and that's getting reported as MRCD. If you're not actually concerned about like those MRCD alerts, you're just using it for the filtering, you can turn on the low-speed muting specifically for MRCD. Furthermore, you can also control the volume of your low-speed muting. If you want the low-speed muting alerts to be totally silent, you can do that here. If you want maybe like volume 1 or volume 2 or something compared to like your higher volume levels, you can control exactly how quiet your low-speed muting beeps are. Or you can just maybe turn it off altogether like this and just have it be completely visual. Next up, we've got the limit speed option, and this is basically going to give you a warning, reminder if you're traveling over a preset speed. So if you know if there's a certain speed that you definitely definitely don't want to be traveling over, you can just set a reminder here to have the detector notify if you hit 75, 80 miles an hour, or whatever it is. Next up, you've got your time zone controls here, so you can set it for whatever's appropriate in your area. And this will be particularly helpful if you change the display mode to display the time when you're driving around. Now, if you've set the time zone here, but it's off by an hour, you can go and double check the daylight savings time option and turn it on and off as needed. Additionally, you've also got a battery warning option, and if you turn that on, the detector will give you a notification if your voltage drops below 11 volts. And similarly, we also have a battery saver feature here built into the detector as well. This feature is going to be helpful if you've got the detector plugged into a power source, say a cigarette lighter or something, that doesn't turn on and off with your car. If that's the case when you park, well, then the detector stays on and it could drain your car battery. For that reason, with this feature enabled, it notices if you've been parked for an hour, via GPS, for example, you're at 0 miles an hour, or you're in a parking garage, we've got no GPS. In those instances, if you've been parked for an hour, it'll go ahead and shut the detector off for you to ensure that you don't drain your car battery and then can't start your car next time. That said, you are going to have to manually turn the detector back on because you don't have a triggered power source for the detector. I would generally recommend, if possible, you can plug it into a power source. It does turn on and off with the car, but I know some cars, like Fords, for example, they stay on all the time, even when parked. So if that's the case, you might want to use this battery saver option. Next, we've got the self-test option. It's going to be on by default, but I find it kind of useless in practice, so I typically turn it off here. But if you've got it turned on, this is basically just going to do a quick sample of different alerts. So if we power cycle the detector real quick, so you can see and hear the alerts like this just to verify the detector is up and running. Now, the reason why I say this is kind of useless is because it's not actually testing for anything in the detector to see if something internally is going wrong, if it can still detect radar properly or not. It's basically just kind of playing some sample, not footage, but just sample clips of what the radar detector looks like and sounds like when it's alerting. So I guess you can verify that the screen is working, that the audio is working, got the volume turned up, but that's really about it. And personally, I prefer a silent startup, so I just go in here and I turn this feature off. Next up is the factory reset option, which just resets all of our settings back to default. And this can be helpful, particularly after a firmware update for the detector. Uniden typically recommends that after you update the detector, you just do a factory reset to reset all the settings, and then you can go back in and adjust your settings as needed. And it's also worth noting that when you do a factory reset like this is only for the detector settings. It doesn't clear your GPS lockouts, for example, your marked locations, or any stuff like that that's been saved into the detector. Now, if you do want to delete those other things, afterwards we've got the option to delete all of our manual GPS lockouts. We can delete all of our automatic GPS lockouts. We can also delete all of the manually created user marks, which I do use from time to time because I don't actually use this feature. If I hit it by accident, this is a nice way to just clear all of them. And then we also have a memory quota that's built in here. And this is basically going to be separating, how many of the available memory slots in the detector are split between our manual GPS lockouts and our manual user marks. Now, the idea here is that with the R4, you've got 2,000 GPS locations that you can store. Again, split between manual GPS lockouts and manually created user marks. Auto lockouts are totally different. You've got more storage for those. And so with the detector, you've got 2,000 GPS locations that are available, kind of split between the two. For myself, because of the fact that I don't really use the manually created GPS user marks, I use the GPS lockouts. I like to allocate as much of the available memory as I can to the GPS lockouts, taking some slots away from the user marks. And I think by default, it looks something like this with maybe 1,000 manual lockouts and 1,000 user marks available. You can use the volume up and down buttons to choose, what goes where. I like to go all the way over like this and do up to 1,750 manual GPS lockouts and then 250 here for the user marks. But of course, you can customize it as you see fit. So we'll hit menu to change quota, and it's going to go ahead and save that. And then moving on, we've also got the Bluetooth options, which we can use to pair the detector with our phone. So I like to have Bluetooth on to connect it to my phone, and then when I'm doing the connection process, the next option here is going to be Bluetooth pairing, which we talked about in the first half of the video. You can go over here and start the Bluetooth pairing process, and then your phone can go ahead and find the detector and connect to it here like this. Next up, we can take a look at the firmware version that's currently loaded into the detector. So I've currently got firmware version 1.30 and DSP version 1.23. And then the next menu option is going to be for our GPS database. So our red light camera and speed camera database. You can see right now I've got April 2nd, 2024 database loaded in. And then finally, we get to the very end of the menu where we can exit. And if we go past that, we go back to the very beginning of the menu. But exit is just another option here to go ahead and exit and go back to the idle screen. And so, yeah, I know that was a lot of information. Now, if you're looking for like recommended settings for your detector, I've got 2 different types of settings that are available. Again, at the bottom of the article on my website, I've got first up my general recommended settings, which would be kind of like a good starting point for most people driving around the country. You can, of course, customize that further based on your preferences, where you're driving, etc. But I think that's just kind of like a good all-around starting point. And then second, if you'd like to see the settings that I personally run here on my R4, if you scroll down a little bit farther, you'll see where I actually share the different settings that I've got here on my detector. And then as a bonus, if you take a look, there's also going to be links under those settings to where you can go and download the settings packs for your detector as well. And these you can load in using Uniden's update software for Windows or Mac. You can basically just open these update files with the update software. It's going to then copy all the different settings here into the update software, and then you can push those settings over to your detector directly without having to go and like manually adjust each setting here individually. Additionally, as you go in and like change your settings, you can then create like backup settings packs like this as well to make it easier to maybe like restore your settings afterwards, or if you've got different ones for different testing or different locations or whatever. It's just a nice extra feature that's available, and I've just shared the ones that I use. Now, these settings packs are going to need to be updated periodically, again, as new firmware updates release that add new features that weren't included with older settings packs and stuff. But either way, that's a nice little bonus that I've got for you guys on my website as well. And so, with that said, I know that was a lot of information. I've been meaning to do this video for a while, and so yeah, I'm glad I finally got this done. Time to go start editing, putting all the pieces together, and sharing these videos with you all. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask down in the comment area below. Other than that, yeah, that's a look here as far as the Uniden R4, how to use a detector, how to set it up, what all the different menu options are, etc. Again, thanks so much. Hope you guys are doing great, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. And so if you're driving around in town, we got a lot of false alerts. My big camera just overheated and shut off for me. My GoPros that I've been shooting these videos on keep overheating, and I keep swapping these out too as they're overheating. So I'll have to let these cool off and maybe even come back tomorrow to finish shooting this video.